My name is Elise Navarro, and the first time my company tried to break me was at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday. The conference room on the 32nd floor was so bright it made everyone look a little sick under the LED lights. 20, maybe 30 people around the table, finance risk, a couple of interns pretending not to breathe too loud. At the head of the table, our CFO folded his hands, looked straight at me, and said, "Clear as glass. Either you apologize to my son, or you hand in your badge by 5. For a second, I honestly thought I'd misheard him. The hum of the vents, the buzz of someone's phone, the faint rattle of a coffee cup. All of it went sharp and slow at the same time. His son Tyler sat to his right, leaning back like this was a show he'd already seen. Perfect tie, perfect hair, that little half-smile people get when they've never actually had to fix their own mistakes. I didn't say anything, not yet. 12 years of swallowing comments in rooms just like this had taught me that silence can be louder than any argument. Martin Caldwell didn't like silence. His jaw twitched. "Elise," he said, voice tightening, "I won't repeat myself." Every eye slid toward me. No one looked directly. They stared at their laptops, the wall, the floor, anywhere but at the woman who'd embarrassed the golden boy yesterday by pointing out that his streamlined model forgot several $1 million in mandatory liabilities. Under the table, my fingers curled around the edge of my chair until my knuckles burned. The familiar shake rose in my chest, that old instinct to apologize first and defend myself later. Then I saw Tyler's smug little smirk, like he was already picturing my empty office. That was the moment I stopped feeling scared and started feeling something else. Interested. When Martin dismissed the room chairs, scraped back in a nervous shuffle. People avoided my eyes the way New Yorkers dodge subway preachers, careful, tense, guilty. I stayed seated. Moving too fast would have felt like giving them the ending they wanted. Tyler lingered by the door, pretending to scroll on his tablet. His reflection showed the same arrogance he'd worn yesterday during his innovation dashboard pitch. I could still hear the way he said outdated, letting it hang just long enough for everyone to know he meant me. I'd corrected his dangerously wrong forecast because it was my job. But people like Tyler treat correction as disrespect. Martin hovered beside him, jaw tight, glancing at me as if waiting for an apology I wasn't about to give. When they finally left, the silence felt heavier than the meeting itself. I gathered my notes, slowly smoothing papers that didn't need smoothing, steadying the tremor in my hands. Walking into the hallway, the office felt unchanged, yet different. Same glass, same cold air, but charged with whispers. People thought I couldn't hear. I stepped into the lounge by the windows, letting the view steady me. This building wasn't the start of my life, and it didn't have to be the end of anything. Harper passed with binders, hesitating, as if she wanted to speak, then kept going. I didn't blame her. It's hard to stand near someone the higher-ups have marked as disposable. My phone buzzed a reminder for a meeting Tyler had scheduled. I deleted it. Whatever was next wouldn't be on his terms. In the window's reflection, I looked calmer than I felt. They thought they'd cornered me, that I'd bow or break. But watching the city pulse below, I realized something clear and sharp. I wasn't finished. I was only beginning. I went home early that day, or rather got pushed out of the building by a force I refused to let see me stumble. The apartment was unusually quiet. Mason sat at the kitchen counter over a math worksheet, one earbud hanging loose. He looked up. "You're home?" Now confusion and concern mixed in his voice. I set my bag down, easing into the familiar hum of our small kitchen. "Yeah, long morning." He studied me in that way only a 14-year-old who's seen too much can. "Did something happen?" I opened the fridge, pretending to search for something. "Nothing you need to worry about." His silence made it clear he didn't believe me. I forced a smile. "Finish your homework. I'll make dinner soon." Later, after he went to his room, I sat at my desk and opened the contract file on my laptop. The pages loaded slowly as if the universe knew what I was looking for. I skimmed past the usual clauses until I reached the one that had been on my mind since the train ride home, a clause left over from before Atlas Ridge absorbed Northline Analytics. I remembered those years living out of hotels, building AegisNet line by line between client meetings. When Northline hired me full-time, they reused the old contract template. They were supposed to update it. They never did. The clause remained, in the event of voluntary resignation without executed transfer of proprietary frameworks, all intellectual property shall revert to Northline Analytics, LLC, my old entity, my work. I leaned back, letting the truth settle, not heavy but steadying. They thought a deadline could corner me. They didn't realize they'd given me an exit years ago. A knock on the door. Mom Mason peeked in. "You okay?" I closed the laptop. "I'm fine." But inside, something solid had clicked into place. I wasn't waiting for them to define my worth. I had already built the thing they depended on, the thing they assumed they owned. The next morning, before making coffee, I printed my resignation letter. By 9, I was back at Atlas Ridge. When I handed the letter to Martin Caldwell, his expression flickered from relief to triumph. But before he could turn away, hurried footsteps echoed down the hall. Dana Liu burst in, clutching a folder. "Tell me you didn't accept her resignation," she said. Martin froze. I didn't, and for the first time in days I almost smiled. Dana's heels hit the floor like warning shots. Martin turned toward her, irritation rising, but whatever he meant to say vanished when she shoved a folder into his hands. "Tell me you didn't accept her resignation," she repeated. Quiet. Dangerous. "She quit. I accepted. What's the problem?" Dana exhaled sharply. "Our entire compliance infrastructure just reverted to her LLC." Silence. Martin stared at the paper as if it were written in another language. "That's impossible." "It's not. The clause was never amended. If she leaves, AegisNet belongs to Northline Analytics." His knuckles whitened. "You planned this?" "No," I said. "I built something you never understood." I left him there while Dana tried to contain the fallout. In the elevator's quiet, my lungs finally expanded. Outside, the cold air steadied me. I walked home, letting adrenaline drain. By the time I reached the apartment, I felt lighter. Mason looked up from his phone. "You're home early. Unexpected schedule change. You seem less stressed." "I made a hard decision," I said. "But it was the right one." We cooked simple pasta, and for a moment life felt uncomplicated. Across the river, Atlas Ridge unraveled. Emails flooded in by evening reports, failing dashboards, blank, every tool locked in restricted mode. Panic everywhere except with me. I sipped my tea. Zipped. I hadn't touched a thing. The system was following the contract. When Dana called voice cracking, I already knew why. "Elise, the audit console is locked. It lists Northline Analytics as the license owner. We need to talk." For the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was in control. Dana chose a dim cafe for our meeting, though nothing about her was calm. She spun her laptop toward me, red errors everywhere. "You need to help us. SEC wants documentation and we can't generate anything. Martin is unstable." "This isn't personal," I said. "This is procedural. What will it take to fix this?" "Accountability. Consulting reinstatement under Northline. Full rights to AegisNet. And a public apology." "Martin will never agree." "Then he doesn't get his system back." She froze, calculating. "I'll take it to the board and remove any gag clause. I won't be silenced again." Dana closed the laptop slowly. "You built a fortress." "No, a safeguard. You just forgot it existed." Outside, winter blue sky settled over the city. I walked home, feeling steady, like a tightrope walker who finally realizes the net belonged to them all along. That night, Harper messaged risk reports failing. "Tyler's blaming you. Are you okay?" I replied fine, but power wasn't exhilarating. It was weighty. I lay awake thinking of Mason, of the years I'd spent quiet because I couldn't afford otherwise. Not anymore. Morning came. I dressed deliberately, slipping into a black blazer-like armor. At Atlas Ridge reception handed me a sealed envelope. My new consultant badge. Metal clicked against my jacket, and as I walked past the glass doors, every conversation in the lobby faltered. I was no longer their employee. I was the person they had to answer to. The first days back at Atlas Ridge felt hollow, as if the building itself was pretending nothing had happened. People spoke quietly when I passed the way they do around someone who survived something they all feared. I didn't seek conversation, but I didn't avoid it. I moved through the halls with a calm I hadn't felt in years, logging into AegisNet with my consultant credentials and reactivating modules at a steady pace. The logs should have been routine. But late one evening, long after most lights were off, I saw something wrong. A series of manual overrides, vendor classifications, risk weights, transaction statuses, edited between 11:04 p.m. and 1 a.m. for weeks. All under the same signature, Tyler Caldwell. Maybe a test, I thought, until the timestamps told me otherwise. No documentation, no approvals. And every override neatly moving questionable vendors into approved exception. My pulse slowed that familiar clarity. Cross-checking the vendor IDs made it worse. Some were tied to partnerships Tyler bragged about. Others were clear risk hazards. The realization settled cold in my stomach. I printed the logs. Paper doesn't disappear when someone panics. The next morning, I found Dana in her office, surrounded by legal pads and cold coffee. She looked exhausted. "Good news." I closed the door. "Not exactly. I found something in the audit trail." She read the first page, then the third, her face going still. "These are manual modifications." "Yes." "All under Tyler's admin account." "Yes." She pressed her fingers to her temples. "If the SEC sees this, they'll assume intent." "I know. Martin doesn't." "I figured." She exhaled shakily. "What do you want to do?" "I want it fixed legally, transparently. No cover-ups." Her voice was barely a whisper. "This could destroy them." "It could," I said. "But hiding it would destroy me." That afternoon, I entered the small conference room where Martin and Tyler were waiting. The air felt colder than normal. Tyler leaned back with his usual arrogance, though the shadows under his eyes told a different story. Martin looked fragile. "How's the system?" Martin asked. Flawless, but you need to see this. I turned the laptop toward them. The timeline of edits glowed, every unauthorized change, every timestamp. Tyler's smirk collapsed. This is out of context. Explain it, I said. It was test data. His voice was thin. Production logs don't lie. Martin's face drained. Tyler, tell me this isn't what it looks like. Tyler shot to his feet. She's doing this for revenge. I stayed calm. Revenge doesn't come with timestamps. The truth does. He stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the glass. Martin remained frozen, staring at the screen. How bad is it? He whispered. Bad, but you still have one option. He looked up. Tell the truth. And for the first time since I'd known him, Martin Caldwell didn't argue. The board called an emergency meeting the next morning. When I arrived, the hallway outside the executive suite was crowded with people pretending not to stare. Their whispers didn't sting this time, they only confirmed the truth had finally overtaken the lies. Inside tension thickened the air. Martin sat rigid, knuckles white. Tyler slumped beside him, his usual confidence abandoned. At the far end, Chairwoman Eleanor Briggs watched the room like a judge. She gestured to an empty seat. Ms. Navarro, we've reviewed the packet Ms. Liu sent last night. We'd like your assessment. I steadied my breath. Every modification occurred in production. Each shows Mr. Caldwell's credentials reclassifying regulated vendor activity without oversight. Tyler lurched forward. It wasn't malicious, just streamlining. Eleanor silenced him with a hand. I continued. No automated processes, no errors, all manual entries over several weeks. A murmur swept the board. Martin stared at the table as if searching for escape. The external auditor leaned in. Would the SEC view these as intentional misrepresentation? Yes, I said. The pattern suggests deliberate alteration. Silence followed, heavy enough to shift careers. Thank you, Eleanor said. That's all we needed. What came next was a slow dissection, failed controls, unauthorized access, Martin's lack of oversight. By the time the board dismissed them, Tyler looked waxy, and Martin seemed years older. Outside, Dana exhaled. They'll suspend Tyler. Maybe worse. I know. And Martin, he may have to resign. I didn't respond. None of this was mine to decide. For the next 2 weeks, I focused on the work I could control, restoring AegisNet module by module, documenting every correction. The team's tone shifted. Emails turned careful, respectful. They finally understood I wasn't just a cog, I'd built the system they depended on. When everything was complete, I submitted the remediation report, the SEC package, and Northline's final invoice. One afternoon, as I packed my things, a knock sounded. Martin entered, shoulders low. Elise, thank you. You saved the company. I corrected it, I said. Tyler resigned this morning. The board is offering you the Chief Compliance Officer role, full authority, anything you need. Once that offer would have been everything. Now it felt like a return to a cage I'd finally left. I appreciate it, I said. But I didn't fight this hard to rebuild something for people who never valued it. He nodded, defeated. When he left, the office felt peaceful in a way it never had before. I picked up my bag and walked out. The sky was a warm gold that would fade within minutes. As I headed to the elevator, my phone buzzed a message from Dana. You did the right thing. Proud of you. I pocketed the phone. This wasn't about pride. It was about choosing myself after years of survival. Outside, the city lights flickered on one by one. A constellation I'd walked under for years without looking. This time I lifted my eyes, and for the first time in a long while, the world didn't feel like it was closing in. It felt like it was opening. Forward. The night I walked away from Atlas Ridge for the second and final time, the air felt different. Not lighter, not warmer, just honest. The kind of honesty that comes when you stop pretending to belong somewhere that's been shrinking around you for years. I took the long way home, letting the city's noise wrap around me. Cars hissing through puddles, loud laughter outside a bar, a bus rumbling past, ordinary sounds, and for once none of it felt like a crisis waiting behind the corner. It was simply life moving without needing anything from me. People imagine revenge as something loud, shouting, slamming doors. But mine was never spectacle. It was recalibration. A quiet shift in gravity, placing everyone where they should have been all along. Martin faced truth. Tyler faced consequences. The board faced their negligence. And I finally faced myself. At my building's entrance, I caught my reflection in the glass. Not triumphant, not victorious, just steady, present. A different kind of power, one I hadn't recognized until everything around me threatened to crack. Upstairs, Mason sat on the couch with a blanket and suspiciously timed popcorn. He looked up, searching my face the way kids study the adults they depend on. I smiled, soft, simple enough. I'm home, I said. Not from a job, not from a battlefield, from a place I'd outgrown. When he scooted over to make space for me, it struck with quiet clarity. Walking away wasn't an ending. It was the first real beginning I'd had in years.